Rome, 38 AD. A wedding celebration turns into the most terrifying 30 seconds of a man's life. The emperor has decided he wants the bride. Picture this. The marble floors of a lavish Roman villa gleam under the light of 100 oil lamps. The air is thick with the scent of roasted lamb, honeyed wine, and fresh roses. Laughter echoes off the walls as Rome's elites celebrate the union of Gaius Calpurnius Piso and his stunning bride, Livia Orestilla. She's 23 years old. Her wedding dress, pure white linen, flows like water as she moves. Her dark hair is crowned with myrtle and orange blossoms. This should be the happiest night of her life. But there's a problem. The emperor is watching. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known to history as Caligula, reclines on his dining couch, barely touching his food. His eyes haven't left Livia since she entered the room. Every guest can feel it. That predatory stare. The way he tracks her movements like a wolf watching a lamb stray from the flock. The groom notices. How could he not? But what can he do? Object to the emperor's attention? That's a death sentence. So Piso does what every Roman man at that party is doing. He pretends not to notice. He smiles. He drinks. He places his hand on his new wife's shoulder and tries to pretend that the most powerful man in the world isn't mentally undressing her. The feast continues. Musicians play. Dancers perform. Senators make toasts praising the happy couple. Their voices just a little too loud. Their laughter just a little too forced. Everyone is performing normalcy while terror sits in the pit of their stomachs. Because everyone knows the stories. They know about the emperor who inspects other men's wives. They know about the disappearances, the humiliations, the things that happen at imperial dinner parties that can never be spoken of afterward. But surely, they think, surely not at a wedding, surely not on the most sacred night of a couple's life. The gods themselves bless marriage. Even an emperor wouldn't. Caligula stands. The room falls silent. 50 conversations die mid-sentence. A lyre player's fingers freeze on the strings. The emperor walks toward the newlyweds' table. Every eye in the room tracks his movement, but nobody dares to look directly at him. Piso's hand tightens on Livia's shoulder. She's trembling now, barely perceptible, but Piso can feel it. Caligula stops inches from them. He smells of expensive perfumes and wine. When he speaks, his voice is casual, almost friendly. A beautiful bride, Piso. Truly magnificent. Thank you, Caesar, Piso manages. His voice doesn't shake. A small victory. Caligula reaches out and tilts Livia's chin up with one finger, examining her face the way you might inspect a horse you're considering purchasing. She doesn't breathe. Nobody breathes. Such beauty should be appreciated properly, Caligula says. Then he turns to his guards, in the manner of Romulus and Augustus. And just like that, it happens. 4 Praetorian guards step forward. Before anyone can process what's occurring, they have Livia by the arms. She gasps, not a scream, not yet, just a sharp intake of breath. Her orange blossom crown slips sideways. Caesar, please. Piso starts to stand. A gladius appears an inch from his throat. The guardsman holding it doesn't look at him. This is just business. Livia's eyes lock with her husband's as they pull her toward the door. In that moment, an entire lifetime of dreams dies. The children they'll never have, the home they'll never build, the ordinary, beautiful life that's being ripped away. Piso watches his bride, his wife, of 4 hours being carried out of his wedding feast by the emperor's guards. The doors close behind them, the sound echoes through the now silent villa. For a moment, nobody moves, nobody speaks. The only sound is the crackle of oil lamps and someone's stifled sob. Then, slowly, the music starts again. Someone forces a laugh. Conversations resume, wooden and hollow. Because what else can they do? You don't mourn at the emperor's pleasure. You don't grieve. You don't rage. You smile. You drink. You pretend nothing happened. Piso sits back down at his wedding table, staring at his wife's empty seat. At her wine cup, still half full. At a single orange blossom that fell from her crown. Somewhere in the imperial palace, his wedding night is happening, just not with him. 2 days later, Caligula divorces Livia and sends her back. Used, humiliated, unmarriageable. Piso never touches her again, not because he doesn't want to, but because the emperor has forbidden it. I won't have you touching what's mine, Caligula told him. The marriage is annulled within the month. But here's what you need to understand. This wasn't unusual for Caligula. This was practically routine. He would attend weddings, festivals, dinner parties, any gathering of Rome's elite, and simply take whatever woman caught his eye. Husbands watched, fathers watched, brothers watched, and nobody could stop him. Because that's what absolute power looks like. It's not just about having authority, it's about demonstrating that authority by violating the most sacred bonds of society, by showing that no husband can protect his wife, no father can protect his daughter, no law or custom or God can stand between the emperor and what he wants. Romans had a specific word for this kind of tyranny, impudicitia, times the violation of free citizens' bodily autonomy for political ends. It wasn't just immoral, it was the definition of illegitimate rule. And Caligula was just getting started. What would you have done? Your Piso, your wedding night, your emperor, your wife being carried away. Do you fight and die? Do you watch and survive? Comment your thoughts below. Because here's what's truly disturbing. As horrific as this was, as public and shocking as this abduction seemed, this wasn't even close to his worst act. If you think taking one man's bride was depraved, wait until you hear what he did to an entire senate's worth of wives, what he turned their dinner invitations into. What happened behind closed doors when husbands were forced to watch? That story is even darker. You're a Roman senator. A slave delivers a sealed scroll to your door. Your hands shake as you break the wax seal because you already know what it says. The divine Caesar requests the honor of your presence at dinner. You will bring your wife. It's not a request, it's a summons. And you've just been handed a death sentence or something worse. Because in Caligula's Rome, refusing an imperial dinner invitation means execution, but accepting it means watching something that will haunt you for the rest of your life. Let me tell you about Senator Marcus. Marcus isn't his real name. The ancient sources protect his identity, probably because his descendants were still alive when the histories were written. But his story was recorded because it was so common, it became mundane. Marcus is 53 years old. He served Rome faithfully for 3 decades. He has a wife, Claudia, whom he's been married to for 28 years. They have 4 grown children. They're not rich by senatorial standards, but comfortable, respected. When the invitation arrives, Claudia sees his face and knows immediately. It's him, isn't it? She asks. Marcus can't speak. He just nods. They don't sleep that night. They lie in darkness, holding hands, not talking. Because what is there to say? Tomorrow night, they'll put on their finest clothes and walk into the emperor's palace like lambs to slaughter. The next evening, they arrive at the Palatine Hill. The palace is magnificent imported marble from Egypt, gold leaf everywhere, fountains that flow with wine instead of water. Other senators and their wives are already there, all wearing the same fixed smiles, the same hollow eyes. Nobody looks at each other directly. It's easier that way. Caligula enters like he's attending a normal dinner party. He's charming, witty even. He jokes with the senators about politics. He asks about their children. He's the perfect host. For exactly 20 minutes. Then his eyes begin to wander. He stands, wine cup in hand, and starts to slowly walk among the dining couches. He's looking at the wives now, really looking at them. The conversation dies away until there's only the sound of his footsteps on marble. He stops behind Claudia. Marcus feels his wife go rigid beside him. Caligula places one hand on her shoulder, possessive, proprietary. With the other, he tilts her face toward the light. How old are you? He asks. 47, Caesar. Her voice is steady. Marcus has never loved her more than in this moment. 47, Caligula repeats thoughtfully. His fingers trace her jawline, her neck. Everyone in the room is watching now, but pretending not to. And still lovely. Your husband must thank the gods daily for such fortune. I am the fortunate one, Caesar, Marcus says, because what else can he say? Caligula smiles. We'll see about that. He signals to 2 guards. Take her to the blue chamber. I'll join her shortly. The blue chamber, everyone knows what that means. Claudia stands. She doesn't look at Marcus. If she looks at him, she'll break. And breaking in front of Caligula is dangerous. She walks away, flanked by guards, her head held high. Marcus sits frozen on his dining couch. Around him, the dinner party resumes. Senators discuss grain shipments. Someone tells a joke. Laughter echoes too loud, too desperate. The musicians play on. 43 minutes pass. Marcus counts every second. When Claudia returns, her hair is dishevelled. Her carefully arranged stola is wrinkled, fastened incorrectly. There's a bruise forming on her wrist. Her face is flushed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She sits back down beside her husband. Neither of them speaks. Neither of them moves to touch each other. Then Caligula returns to his couch and does something that makes Marcus's blood turn to ice. He reviews her, out loud, in front of everyone. Your wife, Marcus, is technically proficient but lacks enthusiasm, Caligula announces, like he's critiquing a theatrical performance. Her body is still acceptable for her age, though she would benefit from more exercise. The sounds she makes are authentic. I can always tell when women are faking, but she closes her eyes too much. Tell her to work on that. The room is silent. Someone's wine cup trembles, spilling red drops onto white marble. But Caligula isn't finished. I rate her a 6 out of 10. Adequate for a woman her age, but I've had better from senators' wives. Senator Rufus, your wife was an 8. You should feel proud. Senator Rufus, 3 couches away, nods mechanically. Thank you, Caesar. You're welcome to compare notes, gentlemen. Caligula continues, swirling his wine. Though I should mention none of you are to touch your wives after I've had them. That would be disrespectful to me. They bear my mark now. And just like that, with a single sentence, he's destroyed not just marriages, but the fundamental right of a Roman man to his own household. Marcus will never touch Claudia again. Not because he doesn't want to, he does, desperately, to comfort her, to tell her he still loves her, that this changes nothing between them. But Caligula has forbidden it, and disobeying means death. They'll live together for another 3 years until Caligula's assassination, in the same house, sleeping in separate rooms. 2 people who loved each other for 28 years, now forbidden from even holding hands. All because they were invited to dinner. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. This wasn't a one-time event. Caligula hosted these dinners constantly, twice a week sometimes. He'd invite different senators each time, making sure to rotate through Rome's entire elite class. No family was safe. No marriage was sacred. The ancient historian Suetonius writes that Caligula would inspect women like cattle at auction. He'd examine their teeth, their hair, their figures. He'd compare wives to each other, ranking them, creating a hierarchy of humiliation. And the husbands, they had to sit there, they had to watch, they had to thank him afterward, because refusing meant execution. Showing anger meant execution. Even showing too much sorrow meant execution. You had to smile. You had to pretend this was normal, acceptable, even an honor. What would you do in this situation? You're sitting there watching your wife being taken away. You know what's happening. You know you'll never be able to comfort her afterward. Do you fight and die? Do you watch and survive with the guilt? Comment below. But here's the real question, the one that keeps psychologists fascinated 2,000 years later. Why? Why this specific form of cruelty? Caligula had absolute power. He could have women killed, exiled, or simply divorced from their husbands. So why the elaborate dinner party ritual? Why force husbands to watch? Why the public critique? Because it wasn't about sex. It never was. It was about demonstrating absolute power through the most intimate violation possible. Romans believed that a man's honor resided in his ability to protect his household, his wife, his children, his property. By violating senators' wives in front of them, Caligula was sending a message: your honor means nothing, your laws mean nothing, your gods mean nothing. I am the only power that matters. Modern psychologists have a name for this: instrumental sexual violence. Violence used not for sexual gratification, but as a tool to dominate, humiliate, and control. And Caligula was a master of it. But senators' wives weren't enough for him. Married women still had some protection under Roman law, minimal but existent. So Caligula started looking for victims who had even less legal protection. His own sisters, because if you want to prove you're beyond all laws, beyond even the laws of nature itself, you don't just violate other men's wives. You violate the most sacred taboo civilization has ever known. And when people whisper about it in horror, when they call you a monster, you make it divine. Incest. the one taboo even Romans feared, the one line even the most depraved emperors wouldn't cross. Caligula's response? Make it divine. But to understand how he got there, you need to understand where it started. And it started in the worst possible place, with trauma, isolation, and two children who had no one else in the world. The year is 19 AD. Caligula is 7 years old. His father, Germanicus, Rome's most beloved general, has just been murdered in Syria, poisoned on the orders of Emperor Tiberius, though no one can prove it. Caligula's mother, Agrippina, is dragged back to Rome with her children, where they're placed under house arrest. Caligula has 3 sisters, Agrippina the younger, Drusilla, and Livilla. They're all close in age, all trapped in the same gilded cage, all living under the shadow of their father's death and their grandfather's paranoia. Their grandmother, Antonia, takes them in, but Antonia is old, grieving her own son's murder, and overwhelmed. The children raise each other, and Caligula becomes closest to Drusilla. She's 1 year younger than him. They share everything: lessons, meals, whispered conversations late at night when the household slaves are asleep. They understand each other's nightmares because they live through the same horrors. When their mother is exiled and their older brothers are executed one by one, they cling to each other. It's not romantic. Not yet. It's survival. Until it isn't. The ancient sources are remarkably consistent on what happens next. Suetonius, writing 80 years later, records that their grandmother, Antonia, caught them in bed together when Caligula was still a teenager, barely old enough to wear the toga of manhood. Think about that moment. Antonia opening a door, seeing her 2 grandchildren, 2 traumatized children who've watched their entire family destroyed, finding comfort in the only way they know how. She doesn't punish them. She doesn't rage. According to the sources, she simply closes the door and never speaks of it again. Because what could she do? Report them to Emperor Tiberius, the same man who killed their father, the man who's already destroyed their family? That would be signing their death warrants. So she stays silent, and the silence becomes permission. Years pass. Caligula survives Tiberius's court barely. He learns to wear masks, to hide his thoughts, to become whatever people need him to be. He watches his remaining family members die, one by one, until only he and his 3 sisters remain. But Drusilla? Drusilla is the constant, the only person who knew him before the masks, the only person who remembers when he was just a frightened boy named Gaius. March 37 AD, Tiberius dies, possibly smothered by Caligula himself, though again, no one can prove it. At age 24, Caligula becomes Emperor of Rome. The Senate expects him to be cautious, grateful, eager to please after years of living in fear. Instead, within weeks, he moves Drusilla into the imperial palace, not as his sister, as his wife, in everything but name. He seats her beside him at state dinners in the position reserved for the empress. He consults her on political decisions. He showers her with honours normally reserved for the emperor's spouse. When anyone questions it, he simply stares at them until they fall silent. Because that's what absolute power means. It means no one can tell you no. Not about war, not about taxes, not about who you love. The Roman elite are horrified but silent. Whispers spread through the city like plague. He's bedding his sister. He treats her like his wife. He's violating every law of gods and men. But what can they do? He's the emperor. He controls the legions. He signs the death warrants. So they watch. They whisper. They do nothing. And Caligula? Caligula doesn't hide it. He flaunts it. He makes senators swear oaths not to Rome, not to the gods, but to Drusilla's health and safety. He puts her image on coins, an honour reserved for dead empresses. He names her heir to his fortune alongside himself. He's not ashamed. He wants everyone to know. The historian Philo of Alexandria, who was actually in Rome during this time, writes about attending an imperial audience where Caligula casually mentioned that Drusilla would bear him a divine child, a child conceived between a living god himself and a goddess her. Think about the psychology of that statement. He's not just violating taboo, he's reframing it, making it sacred, claiming that what's unnatural for mortals is divine for gods. And if you are a god, who can judge you? For 3 years, this continues. Drusilla lives as empress in everything but name. Some sources claim Caligula divorced her from her legal husband just to keep her available to himself. Others say he forced her husband to watch, to sit at dinners, while Caligula openly caressed his sister wife. We'll never know all the details. Privacy dies with the people who lived it, but we know what happens next. June 38 AD, Drusilla falls ill. The exact disease isn't recorded, maybe fever, maybe something she caught from bad water. Ancient Rome was a death trap, even for the rich. Caligula doesn't leave her side. The Emperor of Rome, master of the known world, sits beside her bed, holding her hand like a frightened child. She dies on June 10th, 38 AD. She's 22 years old. And something in Caligula breaks. He doesn't just grieve, he mandates grief. All of Rome is ordered into official mourning. Anyone caught laughing, attending parties, or conducting business is executed. The Senate is forced to pass a law deifying her, making her a goddess. Temples are built in her honor. Priests are appointed to her cult. It's not enough to love her. Everyone must worship her. For months, Caligula refuses to conduct imperial business. He wanders the palace halls at night, calling her name. Slaves report hearing him sobbing behind closed doors. When he finally emerges, he's changed. Harder, crueler. Whatever restraint he had before died with her. His other two sisters, Agrippina and Livilla, mean nothing to him now. Within a year, he'll accuse them of plotting against him and exile them. Ancient sources claim he forced them to prostitute themselves to his male lovers as punishment. Whether that's true or propaganda, we'll never know. But the contrast is stark. Drusilla was deified, Agrippina and Livilla were destroyed. What made Drusilla different? Was it genuine love twisted by trauma and power? Was it obsessive possession? Was it that she was the last connection to his childhood, to the boy he was before he became a monster? Modern psychologists would call it trauma bonding. Two people who survived horror together, their identities fused through shared pain. When you lose everyone else, the person who remains becomes your entire world. But here's the question historians still debate: did it actually happen? Suetonius wrote 80 years after Caligula's death. He had access to earlier sources, but also to decades of accumulated propaganda. Emperors who came after Caligula had every reason to make him look as depraved as possible. It justified his assassination and made their own rule look moderate by comparison. Philo of Alexandria, who was actually there, mentions Caligula's unusual closeness to Drusilla, but never explicitly confirms incest. Seneca the Younger, writing closer to the events, references rumours but not facts. So maybe it happened. Maybe it was exaggerated. Maybe it was complete fiction designed to paint Caligula as a tyrant who violated every sacred law. But here's what we know for certain. Whether or not he actually slept with his sister, Caligula wanted people to believe he did. He wanted Rome to think he was capable of it. He wanted them to know no law, no custom, no taboo could constrain him. Because that's what tyranny looks like. It's not just doing terrible things, it's advertising that you can do terrible things and no one can stop you. And after Drusilla's death, after the last person who might have restrained him was gone, he stopped even pretending to have limits. The palaces were about to become something Rome had never seen before. Industrial-scale sexual predation. Nobility transformed into prostitutes. Fathers receiving bills for their daughters' rape. What happened next wasn't about love or obsession or even cruelty for its own sake. It was about demonstrating that in Caligula's Rome, everyone was for sale. Everybody was available, every person was property, and the emperor was the only one who could set the price. What happens when the emperor decides your palace rooms should look like brothels and fills them with Rome's most respectable women? The year is 39 AD, 1 year after Drusilla's death. Caligula sends out hundreds of invitations across Rome, not just to senators this time, to everyone. Equestrians, wealthy merchants, decorated soldiers, even some common citizens who've caught his attention. The invitations promise an evening of unprecedented luxury and entertainment at the imperial palace. People are excited, honoured even. An invitation to the palace is the social event of a lifetime. They dress in their finest clothes, they bring gifts, they arrive at sunset, walking through marble corridors lit by thousands of oil lamps. And then they see what he's done to the rooms. Every wall has been repainted with explicit frescoes, images that would make Pompey's secret rooms look tame. Professional artists have covered the ceilings with scenes of gods and mortals in every position imaginable. The couches have been reupholstered in Tyrian purple and gold. Mirrors line the walls enormous, expensive mirrors imported from Egypt. The guests laugh nervously. It's shocking, yes, but this is Caligula. He's eccentric. He's divine. Maybe this is just artistic? Then the entertainment arrives. Beautiful men and women file into the rooms, dozens of them. They're wearing almost nothing. Silk that's nearly transparent. Gold jewellery that draws the eye to exposed skin. Professional sex workers, clearly hired for the emperor's peculiar party. The guests relax slightly. Oh, it's that kind of party. Scandalous, but not dangerous. They can watch, drink, leave early if it gets too uncomfortable. Musicians begin to play lyres and flutes, soft and sensual. Slaves circulate with wine, the expensive kind, the stuff that costs more per amphora than most Romans earn in a month. The food is incredible. Roasted peacock, oysters from Britain, fruits from Africa, delicacies from every corner of the empire. For an hour, it's just a very lavish, very explicit party. Then Caligula stands. The music stops. "I'm so glad you could all join me tonight," he says, his voice carrying through the crowded rooms. "I wanted to share something special with my most valued subjects, a new venture I've been developing." He claps his hands. More people enter. And that's when the guests realize the horror of what's happening. Because these aren't prostitutes, Senator Gaius recognizes his 19-year-old daughter, Julia, being led in by imperial guards. She's been dressed like the sex workers' transparent silk, gold chains, coal-lined eyes. She's crying silently, tears running down her carefully painted face. Across the room, equestrian Marcus sees his wife of 15 years, dressed the same way. She won't meet his eyes. A decorated centurion watches his sister, a married woman, mother of 3, being positioned among the professional prostitutes like she belongs there. 15 women. 15 wives and daughters of Rome's elite, all dressed identically to the hired sex workers, all positioned throughout the rooms like merchandise. "Tonight," Caligula announces, "we have a very special selection available." As you can see, I've expanded my offerings to include some of Rome's finest families. The rates are posted by each woman. Enjoy yourselves, gentlemen. Everything is available for the right price. The room is silent except for the soft sobbing of the women and the continued playing of the musicians, because the musicians weren't told to stop, so they keep playing, creating this surreal soundtrack to horror. Julia's father, Senator Gaius, stands frozen. His daughter is standing 10 feet away, positioned between 2 actual prostitutes, with a price sign hanging around her neck like she's livestock at auction. He could rush forward. He could try to take her. But 8 Praetorian guards line the walls, hands on their swords, and Caligula is watching everyone with those predator eyes, waiting to see who will break first. So Senator Gaius does the only thing he can do, the thing that will destroy him from the inside out. Nothing. He stands there, he watches, he survives. The party continues for 6 hours. Some guests participate whether from genuine desire, peer pressure, or fear, we'll never know. Others sit paralysed on their couches, drinking wine until they're numb. The professional sex workers perform their duties alongside the senator's daughters and equestrians' wives, creating this nightmarish blend where you can't tell who's there by choice and who's there by imperial command. Julia, Senator Gaius's daughter, is approached 3 times that night. Her father watches each time. He watches men, he knows men, he's served Rome with, men whose houses he's eaten, and negotiate with the guards and lead his daughter into one of the private chambers. Each time she comes back, something in her eyes dies a little more. The centurion's sister is purchased 5 times. She's 34 years old, married for 16 years, mother of 3 children. Tomorrow she'll have to go home to her husband and pretend this didn't happen, that she wasn't for sale, that her brother didn't watch it occur. Around midnight, one young nobleman gets drunk enough to object. He stands up, swaying, and shouts, "This is an abomination! These are free women, Roman citizens. You can't." A gladius punches through his back and out his chest. He drops to the marble floor, blood spreading across the white stone. Guards drag his body away. The musicians never stop playing. No one else objects. The party finally ends at dawn. Exhausted guests stumble out into the early morning light, desperate to escape. They look like survivors of a battle, which, in a way, they are. 3 days later, Senator Gaius receives a bill. It's itemized professional calligraphy on expensive papyrus. It lists his daughter's name, the number of transactions she participated in, the rates charged, and a total. He owes the imperial treasury 50,000 sesterces for his daughter's rape. Equestrian Marcus gets a similar bill, 35,000 sesterces for his wife. The centurion, 40,000 for his sister. Every father, every husband, every brother who had family members employed that night receives an invoice. And they pay. Every single one of them pays. Because not paying means admitting what happened, means making it official, means their daughters and wives and sisters become known throughout Rome as imperial prostitutes. So they liquidate assets, they sell property, they borrow from moneylenders at ruinous interest rates. They pay for their own humiliation and the humiliation of their families, because the alternative is worse. Senator Gaius pays his bill in full. Then he goes home and finds Julia in her room, staring at nothing. "I'm sorry," he whispers. She doesn't respond, doesn't even acknowledge he's there. The girl he raised, who used to laugh at his jokes and debate philosophy with him, is gone. Something else is wearing her skin now. Within the month, she'll try to kill herself. He'll stop her the first time, the second time. The third time, he'll hesitate, just long enough, because maybe death is mercy. Here's what makes this even more horrific. This wasn't a one-time event. Caligula hosted these parties repeatedly over the next year, different families each time. He rotated through Rome's elite systematically, making sure everyone understood that no one was safe. Your daughter could be next, your wife, your sister, anyone, and you'll receive a bill afterward. Modern psychologists who study this kind of systematic sexual violence point out that Caligula wasn't acting out of lust. 50 women were available for hire in Rome at any time, beautiful, skilled, willing. He didn't need to force senators' daughters. This was about something else entirely. It was about demonstrating that Roman law, the law that said free citizens' bodies were inviolable, that said a father's authority over his household was sacred, meant nothing, that every person in Rome was just property the emperor hadn't decided to use yet. And the billing? The billing was genius in its cruelty. It transformed fathers from victims into accomplices. It made them financially complicit in what happened to their daughters. Every time they made a payment, they were acknowledging the transaction as legitimate. Caligula understood something fundamental about power and humiliation. Physical violence ends. But making someone pay for their own degradation, that's a wound that never heals. What would you do? Your daughter is standing there. You have the money to pay. Do you pay and save her reputation? Do you refuse and make it public? There's no good choice. Comment below. But if you think this was as public as his depravity got, you haven't heard what he did next. Because everything you've heard so far happened behind palace walls, private horrors, family secrets. But Caligula wasn't satisfied with private horrors anymore. He needed the world to watch. 50,000 Romans packed into an amphitheatre, noon sunlight beating down on sand, and in the centre, standing terrified and confused, were people who woke up that morning thinking they were safe. They were about to learn in front of the entire city that in Caligula's Rome, no one was ever safe. January 24th, 41 AD. The Roman amphitheatre. 50,000 people packed into stone seats that climbed toward the sky. The smell of roasted nuts, sweat, and anticipation hangs in the air. It's a perfect day for the games, clear sky, warm sun, the kind of weather that makes you grateful to be alive in the greatest city on earth. What's about to happen will finally be too much, even for Rome. Gladiatorial games are normal. Romans have watched men kill each other for entertainment for generations. Blood on sand is part of civic life. Brutal, yes, but accepted. Expected even. But today feels different. The emperor's here, of course. Caligula sits in the imperial box. surrounded by his Praetorian guard. He's been acting strange lately, stranger than usual. He barely sleeps. He wanders the palace at night, having conversations with statues of Jupiter, arguing with the god like they're equals. Some say he's going mad. Others say he's always been mad and now he's just stopped hiding it. The games begin normally enough. Criminals fight wild beasts, standard stuff. A lion tears apart a convicted murderer. The crowd cheers. Vendors sell honey cakes and watered wine. Children sit on their father's shoulders, watching their first games, learning what it means to be Roman. Then Caligula stands. He signals to the master of games. Everything stops. When the emperor stands, you pay attention. Every eye in the amphitheatre turns to the imperial box. Even the gladiators pause, blood-soaked and breathing hard. Caligula points to a section of seats, good seats, expensive seats, where equestrians and wealthy merchants sit with their families. That one, he says. His voice carries in the sudden silence. The handsome one. 4th row. Yes, him. Guards move through the crowd. People press back, trying to make themselves invisible, but the guards know exactly where they're going. They stop at a young man, mid-20s, athletic build, well-dressed. His name is Aetius Proculus, and he's the son of a chief centurion, a man of some importance, some wealth, some respect. Aetius doesn't understand what's happening. None of us would. He's just watching the games. He bought his ticket. He's done nothing wrong. Bring him down. Caligula orders. The guards grab Aetius by both arms and haul him out of his seat. His friends try to object. What did he do? He hasn't done anything. But gladius blades appear and objections die. 50,000 people watch as Aetius Proculus is dragged down the stone steps, through the gate, and out onto the sand of the arena floor. He's wearing a toga, soft leather sandals. He's not a fighter. He's never held a weapon in his life beyond a practiced sword in training. He's an administrator, a citizen, someone who goes to the baths and attends dinner parties and lives an ordinary, comfortable Roman life. The crowd is confused. Is this part of the show, some new entertainment they haven't seen before? Then Caligula speaks again, and his words turn blood to ice. Give him a sword. Let's see if he's as capable as he is attractive. They bring out a gladiator, not some novice or criminal forced to fight a professional. A man who's killed 20 opponents in this very arena. A man whose muscles are carved from years of training, whose scars tell stories of survival. They put a gladius in Aetius's shaking hand. Fight, Caligula commands. Entertain me. Aetius stares at the weapon like it's a snake. He looks up at the imperial box at the emperor, and you can see the question in his eyes. Why? What did I do? Why me? But there's no answer. There's never an answer with Caligula. Sometimes he does things just because he can. Because your comfort, your safety, your life, they're all just toys for his amusement. The gladiator doesn't want to do this. You can see it in his face. This isn't combat, it's murder. But he has his orders. The fight, if you can call it that, lasts 45 seconds. Aetius doesn't know how to hold the sword properly, doesn't know how to move his feet, how to parry, how to create distance. The gladiator tries to make it quick, one thrust through the heart, a mercy killing, but Caligula stops him. No, not there. I want to see him suffer. Cut him. Make it last. So the gladiator does. Because what choice does he have? He slashes Aetius's sword arm, not deep enough to kill, just enough to hurt. The young man drops his weapon. He's crying now, begging, asking why, pleading for someone to explain what he did wrong. The gladiator cuts him again. Across the thigh, across the ribs. Shallow cuts that bleed and burn and terrify, but don't kill. 50,000 Romans watch in silence. This isn't entertainment. This is horror. This is watching someone like them, a citizen, a free man, someone who probably went to the same baths they go to, being tortured for no reason except the emperor's pleasure. Aetius falls to his knees. Blood runs down his toga, soaking into the sand. He's not even fighting anymore. He's just enduring, waiting for it to end. Finish it, Caligula finally says, bored now that his toy is broken. The gladiator drives his sword through Aetius Proculus's heart. Quick, professional. The only mercy he can offer. A boy in the 4th row, Asius's younger brother screams. The sound cuts through the silence like a blade. Their father has to physically restrain him from climbing down onto the sand. The body is dragged away. Fresh sand is raked over the blood. The games continue, but something has changed. You can feel it in the air. This crossed a line. Romans expect violence in the arena. They demand it. But violence against criminals, against slaves, against barbarians, not against their own, not against citizens who've done nothing wrong except catch the emperor's eye. In the imperial box, Caligula is laughing. He's explaining to his advisors why Asius's death was necessary, something about the young man being too handsome, about how beauty without power is offensive to the gods. None of it makes sense. It's the rambling of someone who's disconnected from reality, or someone who's so powerful that reality doesn't matter anymore. But this isn't the worst of what happens in the amphitheatre. Over the following weeks, Caligula's spectacles become more elaborate, more depraved. He has prisoners, men and women, both forced into sexual acts in front of the crowd, not as punishment for specific crimes, but as entertainment between gladiator fights, like it's just another show, just another diversion for the masses. He forces fathers to watch their sons executed, then attend banquets that same evening and pretend to be happy. Anyone who shows too much grief is accused of disloyalty and executed the next day. He orders handsome young men mutilated their faces, scarred, their bodies disfigured, because he can't stand for anyone to be better looking than him. Some of these men are senators' sons. Equestrians, citizens with rights and protections under Roman law, none of it matters. The law is whatever Caligula says it is. And every atrocity happens in public, in the amphitheatre, in the forum, in the circus. He wants Rome to see, he wants 50,000 witnesses to understand that he can do anything to anyone at any time. But here's what Caligula doesn't understand about absolute power. Eventually, you terrorize the wrong person. In this case, several wrong people. Cassius Chaerea is a tribune in the Praetorian Guard. He's a veteran, fought in Germania, survived battles that would break lesser men. He's tough, capable, loyal. But Caligula mocks him constantly, calls him weak, questions his masculinity, forces him to use obscene passwords when commanding the guard. It's public humiliation, the kind that erodes a soldier's authority and respect. Chaerea endures it. For months, he endures it. But after Asius Proculus's murder in the arena, something shifts. Chaerea starts having quiet conversations with other guards, with senators, with equestrians whose wives and daughters have been violated at imperial parties. A conspiracy forms. Not quickly, conspiracies take time when the penalty for failure is death. But person by person, meeting by meeting, a plan develops. They're going to kill the emperor. And here's the critical detail, the reason they all give for why Caligula must die: his sexual violence, his violation of free citizens' bodies, his transformation of Roman wives and daughters into imperial prostitutes. Ancient sources, multiple sources, writing from different perspectives, all agree on this. The conspiracy wasn't formed because of bad policy or military failures. It was formed because Caligula violated the fundamental Roman concept of times pudicitia, times bodily autonomy for free citizens. A tyrant who raises taxes is unpopular. A tyrant who loses wars is dangerous. But a tyrant who violates citizens' bodies, who demonstrates through sexual violence that you own nothing, not even your own family, that tyrant gets assassinated. January 24th, 41 AD, 4 years to the day after Caligula became emperor. He's leaving the Palatine Games, walking through a narrow underground passage beneath the palace. He's in a good mood. The games were entertaining. He's talking about the upcoming theatrical performance, about dinner plans, about nothing important. Cassius Chaerea steps out of the shadows. "This is for all the obscene passwords," he says. Then he drives his sword into Caligula's shoulder. The emperor stumbles, shocked. He's divine. He's invincible. How can this be happening? Other conspirators emerge. Senators, guards, equestrians, men whose wives were violated, fathers whose daughters were prostituted, brothers who watched their sisters destroyed. They stab him again and again and again, 30 times. The historical sources are specific. 30 stab wounds. They don't just kill him, they obliterate him. 4 years of rage and humiliation and terror pouring out in steel and blood. Caligula tries to speak, maybe to command them, maybe to ask why, maybe just to scream. But his jaw is broken. Blood fills his mouth. All that comes out is gurgling. According to Suetonius, his last words, gasped between stab wounds, are, "I still live." Cassius Chaerea responds, "Strike again," and they do. Until the divine emperor, the living god, the man who claimed to be Jupiter's equal, is just meat on stone floor. But the conspirators don't stop there. They hunt down Caligula's wife, Caesonia. She's in the palace, unaware of what's happening. They kill her, one sword thrust, quick. Then they find his infant daughter, Julia Drusilla. She's barely a year old, named after Caligula's beloved sister, innocent of everything except being his child. They smash her head against the wall, because you don't just kill a tyrant. You erase his bloodline, you eliminate any possibility of revenge or succession. You send a message: this is what happens when you violate every sacred law. The bodies are buried in secret, no state funeral, no monuments, just holes in the ground and quicklime to speed decomposition. Within hours, the Senate is meeting. They're debating whether to restore the Republic, whether to appoint a new emperor, whether to honour or condemn Caligula's memory. The debate lasts about 30 seconds. Asterisk, damnatio memoriae times condemnation of memory. It's decided unanimously. Caligula's name is chiselled off monuments, his statues are melted down. Official records are altered to minimise his existence. The Senate wants him forgotten, erased, like he never existed. But here's the thing about atrocity. You can't erase it. You can destroy the statues and burn the records, but the memories remain. The trauma remains. Senator Gaius, the man who watched his daughter sold as a prostitute, never recovers. He dies 2 years later, still paying off the debt he incurred, paying that bill. His daughter is already gone. Marcus and Claudia, the couple from the dinner party, live in separate parts of their house until Marcus dies of fever in 43 AD. They never speak of that night. Not once, not ever. The centurion whose sister was forced into the palace brothel retires from military service. He can't stand wearing the uniform anymore. It reminds him of the guards who positioned his sister like merchandise. Aetius Proculus' younger brother, the one who screamed when his brother was murdered, develops what modern doctors would call PTSD. He has nightmares for the rest of his life, becomes an alcoholic, dies at 42, never having married, never having recovered. These are the invisible victims, the ones who survived but wish they hadn't, the ones who have to live with the memory of what they witnessed, what they endured, what they failed to prevent. 2,000 years later, we still remember Caligula. His name is still synonymous with sexual tyranny and absolute corruption. History gave him exactly what he wanted, immortality, just not the kind he imagined. But here's what modern historians and psychologists want you to understand. Caligula wasn't insane, or rather, insanity isn't the explanation. Recent psychological analysis suggests he might have had temporal lobe epilepsy, which can cause behavioural changes. Maybe that's speculation. What's not speculation is this. He understood exactly what he was doing. The sexual violence wasn't random or impulsive. It was systematic, strategic, designed to communicate a specific message. I own everything, everyone, everybody in Rome is mine to use. Sexual violence isn't about sex. It's never been about sex. It's about power, about control, about reducing human beings to objects you can possess, use, and discard. Caligula understood this instinctively. He knew that the fastest way to destroy someone's humanity isn't to kill them, it's to violate them, then force them to continue living with the memory, to make them complicit, to send them bills, to make them thank you afterward. That's tyranny in its purest form. And here's the connection to today. This pattern repeats. Throughout history, tyrants use sexual violence as a tool of political control. Bosnia, Rwanda, Bangladesh, Myanmar. Different centuries, different continents, same tactic. Because Caligula taught future tyrants an important lesson. Physical violence breaks bodies, but sexual violence breaks societies. It destroys trust, honour, family bonds, social cohesion. It reduces citizens to victims and makes resistance feel impossible. 2,000 years later, we remember Caligula's victims. Livia or Astilla, torn from her wedding. Claudia and Marcus, forbidden from touching each other. Julia, who couldn't survive what happened to her. Aesius Proculus, murdered for being handsome. The nameless daughters and wives and sisters forced into imperial brothels. We remember them because their stories matter. Because forgetting them means forgetting what absolute power looks like, what tyranny actually means. What happens when one person has no limits, no accountability, no force capable of saying no? The Roman Republic died before Caligula. Julius Caesar killed it. Augustus buried it. But Caligula proved why it needed to die, because any system that allows one person absolute authority will eventually produce a monster. And when that monster emerges, every sacred law, every ancient custom, every protection you thought was guaranteed vanishes. Subscribe so history's darkest lessons are never forgotten. Because the moment we forget what tyranny looks like, the moment we think it could never happen here, we've already taken the first step toward repeating it. And if you think Caligula was the worst Rome had to offer, you haven't heard about Empress Messalina yet, Emperor Claudius's wife, who turned sexual excess into competitive sport, who challenged Rome's most famous prostitute to a contest and won, who conspired to overthrow her own husband through systematic seduction of the Praetorian Guard. That story drops next week. Because Rome's depravity didn't die with Caligula, it just learned to be more subtle, more calculating, more terrifying. See you in the next video. Don't forget what you learned here today. Because someone, somewhere, is counting on you to remember